Okay, so excuse the echo there. So I've done several stages of this drawing, but I'm going to start over again and try to get a good video introducing you to how you get started with the sketching of your composition and laying out the values. So this will be just like the first, this would be the first step before what is up in the assignment, the two images that I posted recently. Okay, so I've already done some sketches. I did my thumbnail sketches. Those are part of they're in the assignment if you want to look at them. And again, I know that I've explained what you can do with the thumbnails, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time doing that. But I'm going to start off drawing the sketch that I decided to go with, the thumbnail. And once I figured out my composition, I took the photograph and cropped the area that I was looking at. And so I have that image cropped down to the dimensions that I want to use for this drawing and based on my thumbnail. So that might be something that you could do, okay? So I put a ground down with the vine charcoal. I put a lot of vine down the first time, smoothed it out, put a little more down in areas where it was a little bit paler and rubbed it in again. So I've got a nice, pretty good ground. It's a, it's a middle value and it's a good place to start, okay? So I'm just gonna spend some time sketching out the composition and I might say a few things in the process and hopefully you'll be able to hear me when you replay this. So went from left to right here for the bottom part. And this, if you notice that something's off right away, you can just rub your drawing back into the surface. This was too tall. And it might be that the black ball that I started off with was not tall enough. So what I might do is just start back over here with the black ball and draw a little bit more of the box. And just know, if you're trying to get an angle, hold your charcoal stick up against the edge in the photograph or directly in front of you. And then bring your arm over to your drawing board and just look at that angle and then just mimic it as you're drawing, okay? So in some of your lines, you're going to be not, you're just going to be very faint, maybe because they're, it's an inside it's an inside edge, for example, like a fold on the fabric. I had to redraw the mouse. I was going too big in scale, and but it's definitely made it better for me to go behind the ball and then work my way over to the right, and then I can get a better idea of where to put the creamer and the I'm going to call it a pepper mill in the background. And so, if this ends up going a little bit out of the picture plane from the photograph, that's fine with me. I'm gonna, hopefully it won't happen, but it's not that big of a deal. And it's, there's a pretty strong change in value, then go ahead and draw that value shape. That really helps when you want to go to the next step. I'm trying not to do any shading. It's really tempting, but I drew the shape of the cast shadow here. Um, there's the edge up here in the mouse figurine. I'm drawing the edge where the shadow meets the light, and a little bit of information with the nose. Trying to see and understand this, and just going from shape to shape as I draw. Okay, so and then here in this corner, there's some shadows, and reflective light is right in this area. And then we've got a deep shadow that connects into the side of the ball. And so that's kind of a signal that maybe the ball needs to come further out to the right. But before you make that assumption, you want to make sure that it's just that this isn't the problem, that it really is this. Because if everything is working up here, then more than likely it is down here. But you never want to make an assumption. You want to just step back and ask yourself, well, how is this relating to everything else that I have in the composition, and what should I change? And I'm kind of going back over here because there is a shadow that I want to get in here. Okay, so I'll come back to that later. Also, shadow here. Makes it so much easier in a lot of ways to figure out some of this from the very beginning. So don't be lazy. I'm joking, but I'm also a little bit serious. There's a string over here. So, you know, the top of the ball, the top of the left ball is just a little bit higher than the creamer. So I'm gonna kind of make a mark here to let myself know that I can't really go past a certain point. I'm gonna probably come down a little bit more. Look at your curves, where are they coming towards you? Sometimes it's not always just right in the middle. A little more to the right or to the left of center. That's a that's a fold edge. And then I have the top. I mean, that's right. You can kind of see I'm running into an issue here. Pepper grinder, the negative space wasn't working with where I had this. So I just decided to bring it up a little bit higher. And then if I get back away from the drawing, I'm okay. But I'm looking at this ellipsis and it's too open. When I bring it up, it gives me more surface space here. And see where this is almost looking like a corner. It should really kind of round. I should take that all the way over here. Okay. This will make a lot more sense when we start to add some values to it. This is really kind of explaining not the outside edge of the spout, but more like the shadow that is coming up into the spout. And then there's a piece of light here. Does that look symmetrical? I don't know. I'll have to get back away from my drawing to see if it does. I don't want to start, I want to find out that information first before I start putting darks and lights in it, because if I don't, if I go to the trouble of putting darks and lights and then I get back and look at the shape and it's not straight up and down, then I've wasted a lot of time. And you're going to find that the ground works sometimes for the value. I just happened to see that possibility over here to the right, but I'm going to stand back away from the drawing and get right in front of it. So I don't think I have this section right down here. I think it needs to be a little bit wider. Part of what I can look at is like, what is this negative space between the handle of the creamer and this edge look like? And then kind of adjust as I'm going up. And I probably am going to erase a little bit because it's just too messy in here. And I can't see what I'm doing. Okay. Still kind of messy, but now I've got all my shapes drawn in. So, and I'm the second time I go through this, I'm going to be taking charcoal off where I see either direct light or because the objects themselves are light in value. And then I'm going to be adding more charcoal to areas where we have shadows or the objects are a dark color. So So again, you know, if you have gray objects in your still life, or if you have these black objects, then putting a base tone down is really helpful when you want to get the light and the transitions from the light into the shadow articulated in your drawing. And when I say articulated, I mean just that you're working the medium to get the values that you want. So that's all I mean by that. Okay. So, so some of these value shapes I've drawn, and like this one. And depending on what, how dark it is, I'm either going to use the compressed charcoal or the vine charcoal. I'm going to stick with the vine charcoal for a lot of this, but when I get into the sphere and the peppermill, I'm going to put that first layer down with the compressed charcoal. Okay. I could put a layer of vine down and then put compressed over the top of it. That's not a bad idea. So maybe I'll do that. Okay. We do have a we do have some areas in that black sphere where the paint has chipped, and I'm not going to worry about that right now. A little bit later, I'll deal with it, but that's like a texture thing. But I definitely don't want to put a lot of charcoal down in that area. So with this vine charcoal, when that could be easily erased. And you know, I'm just scribbling basically, because I can smooth all of this out. And I just want to block in the shape. Good. And then a little more. So I'm using the ground for these areas where, like the reflective light, or you know, the fabric is a really light colored fabric. So I mean, it's really a white fabric, so it's I don't need to make the values really dark in this area. This is a cast shadow from the gravy boat. I mean the creamer. No. You can just see how these, you know, these values or shadows just sometimes they really make us aware of an edge. Sometimes they just connect from one surface to the next. You know, you can use the tip of the vine when you want to really kind of sharpen in the shape. Lessen the pressure. Put more pressure. Try to expand your observation skills, you know, as you're doing this, ask yourself, even though you're not ready to get really specific, but ask yourself if you see foreshadows, if you see reflective light, what do the shadows tell you about, and the reflections tell you about the material the object's made out of? You know, notice how the creamer is a warmer white, and there's a lot of subtle things happening on the surface. That's like the last phase getting in there, and yeah. So you can see some areas I'm not doing anything, even though there's a shadow. And that's because I'm thinking of this cast shadow from the pepper mill. But I'm not doing anything because when I take the eraser and take the charcoal off, then it's going to really look more like a shadow. So um, probably same thing there. Okay. So And you always have, just because you see something like I saw, I'm looking at the cone and then I saw the string in the photograph and I'm like, I almost put it in there, but then I had to ask myself, okay, is that the right place for that? So, stop yourself and on occasion and really examine where you are. And if you're, um, there's a couple of things can happen, as you're sketching your drawing from the photograph onto your Strathmore, you might find yourself going a little bit bigger in scale. And so if you don't get everything in that was in your photograph, that might be one of the reasons. I talked about how the creamer in this could potentially be cropped off more than what I anticipated. And a little bit, but you can definitely see the handle in the photograph. And over here to the right, but it's not in my composition. So if anything, okay. And when you are working the drawing, you just have to remember that when you're looking at your photograph, that's that's a smaller scale than your drawing. So, if you're looking at your photograph and you're on your, and you're not looking at your drawing as you move your pencil, which is fine. I want everybody to really kind of develop that habit, but you also want to check things and make sure that your scale is fitting with what you're seeing and what you've drawn in that area. Okay. So this is also when you're putting into practice what you learned about planar analysis. The fact that when there's a shift along the contour, then there's going to be shifts in values, along that side. And that's important to notice. And so now we're going to go in and take the eraser. So I've got this pink pearl that I'm going to use. Sorry, wiggly. And I like using the end of it in the corner. I also have my quick eraser, my mechanical eraser. That's great for taking off large areas. So is the pink pearl. And if you have a white eraser that's like the pink pearl, that's great. And it'll do the same thing as the pink pearl. The pink pearl it's molded to have this sharp edge or pretty hard edge. And so it's really nice for shaving off the surfaces. And so from here on out, the thing that I think is really important is to really learn how to manipulate your erasers and be forceful when you need to with the scrubbing. So like, for example, here, and and then I can redraw. See how I'm using like the the edge and a little bit of the corner here to draw the string. See the contrast there? So the contrast is there because this, this is a middle, a good middle gray. Now, if I start to, this is also like a warm white object. So now I'm starting to pick up some of the charcoal. And I just moved in two different directions there. I'm not going to press down as hard over here. And I'm just going to move in the direction of my shapes. If the charcoal smears on the paper, just wipe it off on your board, wipe your eraser off on your board or on your apron, your jeans. And the eraser will also kind of do a little bit of blending for you too. So I'm just kind of going back and forth in this really light scrubbing manner. And I'm just using that edge for this elliptical. If I go too far with it, I can go back in with Divine, or I can go back in with my chamois or a blending tool and kind of put things back in their place, put your edges back in their places. I just like, this is really bright right here in this negative space. So I'm just, this I should blend it in, but I just want to get all the lights out first. And I haven't drawn the string that comes down through the top and connects. So, I'm just twisting. Now I could just take my eraser and draw it, but I think I'm gonna just kind of work over here for a little bit. I'm just doing a recording. So with the little mouse, so with the little mouse, I'm gonna go in with the mechanical eraser. So this broke, so there's some shapes that don't look like they make a lot of sense, but sometimes you just have to have more information and then it'll help. So if you look at the direction of the stream coming down and where I have the cone, things are not really lining up very well between the, the cone and the string and so forth. So, and maybe I drew the mouth too big, you know, and that could be part of the problem. So I'm gonna try to see what happens if I. So now I can go in, and if I wanted to, I could maybe either just take an eraser and erase out White shapes. Not gonna make them too specific now, I'm just gonna mark her, but we'll pay more attention to those a little bit later, okay? So everything kind of has it, you know, all the surfaces have been addressed. Some of them need more work. Um, And so at least if you look at the two images that are in the assignment that are like the second and third passing from this, then you get an idea of where you start and how you progress, okay? And this is where I can go in with the compressed charcoal and really focus. And there's also something on the creamer that is that um, I'm gonna wait a little bit because I think I could put that in the next steps. Okay, so I'm gonna stop there. Hopefully this works.